Have you ever noticed how people talk about growing older like it's supposed to be simple? They say things like, "Now you can finally relax," or "This is the time to find someone and settle down." But what if I told you that for many people, especially after 60, life doesn't slow down, it just gets more complicated? You've probably heard well-meaning advice before. You need a partner so you won't be lonely. Don't give up. You still have time to fall in love again. And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder if they're right. But no one ever talks about the cost. The real cost. Not just financial, but emotional. The peace you've built. The independence you've earned. The quiet dignity that comes from doing life on your own terms. That's the part no one warns you about. At this stage in life, mistakes aren't measured in lost time the way they were in your 30s or 40s. Now, a mistake can cost you your peace of mind, something that's a lot harder to get back once it's gone. So today, let's have an honest conversation, one without pressure, one where you're allowed to question the idea that you need to be with someone in order to be whole. Maybe you've been divorced. Maybe you're widowed. Maybe you've been alone for a long time and you're starting to think, maybe I should try again. And maybe that's not such a good idea. Not unless a few things are in order first. Let's start here. Your peace. The kind that shows up when you wake up slowly with the sun, make coffee in silence, and read without being interrupted. The kind that allows you to fall asleep with no noise, no drama, no one else's mood dictating your night. That kind of peace is rare, and it's precious. But for some reason, the older we get, the more society pushes us to trade that peace for a partner. As if being alone were some kind of disease we have to cure. As if the quiet life you've carefully built over decades is somehow incomplete, unless someone else is sitting across from you at the dinner table. Let me tell you a story. Linda, a retired nurse in her mid-60s, had always feared growing old alone. So when a charming man named Ray came into her life, she saw it as a second chance. At first it was sweet. He brought flowers, made dinner, complimented her cooking. But after a few months, things started to shift. He began rearranging her kitchen without asking. He left the TV on until 2 a.m., while she was trying to sleep. He invited his children over without telling her. Little by little, Linda realized she was no longer living her life. She was managing someone else's. Her days didn't feel like hers anymore. What she thought would be companionship turned into a quiet kind of chaos. And the worst part wasn't the arguments. It was the way her peace slipped away so slowly, she almost didn't notice until it was gone. Here's a question you can ask yourself that might tell you everything you need to know. With this person in your life, do you have more peace or less? Not more excitement, not more distraction, more peace. If the answer isn't clear, then the cost may already be too high. There's another truth most people don't like to talk about. Being alone does not mean you've failed. Somewhere along the way, especially in this culture, we began to treat solitude like a punishment. As if sitting by yourself in a restaurant or walking through a park without someone next to you is something to be ashamed of. But let me ask you, what if being alone isn't a sign of failure at all? What if it's a sign of freedom? Not long ago, I spent a quiet Sunday at home. No one called, no one knocked. I cooked a meal I loved, listened to the music I liked, and finished a book that had been sitting on my shelf for months. There was no need to negotiate what to watch on TV, or what to eat, or when to talk. Just space. Just stillness. And I realized this is not loneliness. This is presence. This is contentment. Now sure, there are days when the silence feels too loud. And yes, there are moments when it would be nice to share coffee with someone in the morning. But those are fleeting. And they pass. What doesn't pass as easily is the frustration, resentment, and loss of self that comes when you jump into a relationship just to avoid being alone. Here's something you can try. I call it the companionship journal. For 1 week, keep track of your favorite moments. Was it your morning walk? A phone call with a friend? Watering your plants? Playing with your grandchild? Then ask yourself, which of those moments actually required a partner to enjoy? You might be surprised by how much fulfillment you already have and how little of it depends on another person. That brings me to something even trickier. Let's talk about money. Yes, I know. It's not romantic. But if you've ever lived through a divorce or shared finances with someone irresponsible, you know this part matters, maybe more than anything else. Money shapes relationships. Not because it's about greed, but because it reflects values. Stability, planning, respect. I once met Robert, a 72-year-old veteran who had just started dating a widow from his church. She seemed kind, warm, even fun. But a few months in, she began hinting that they should merge bank accounts. "What's mine is yours, right?" she said. Robert, being generous by nature, agreed. But things didn't go well. Before long, she was spending freely, things he didn't need, didn't agree with, and certainly didn't budget for. Vacations, home decor, even gifts for her grandchildren, all on his dime. He didn't just lose money, he lost trust. And the relationship ended, leaving him with less than he started, not just in his bank account, but in his heart. It's easy to ignore red flags when you're enjoying companionship. But the truth is, love doesn't cancel out the need for clarity. If someone resists talking about money or rushes to combine assets, that's not romantic. That's reckless. Before you open your heart, open your ledger. Lay everything on the table. How much it costs to live. What you earn. What you owe. What you expect. These aren't just numbers. They're boundaries. And boundaries protect peace. So, if you're thinking about starting something new at this stage of life, ask yourself, do I have peace with myself? Do I enjoy my own company? Are my finances in order, and am I willing to talk openly about them? If the answer is no to any of those questions, it's okay to pause. It's okay to wait. And it's more than okay to remain exactly where you are, in a life you've worked hard to build, with a calm you've earned the right to protect. Because being in a relationship should never cost you your clarity, your confidence, or your calm. It should be an addition, not a trade-off. Now let's talk about something that often gets brushed under the rug: the idea that sharing a home is proof of love. For some reason, people still believe that if you're in a relationship, you need to move in together. As if love isn't real unless you're brushing your teeth side by side and fighting over how to load the dishwasher. But here's the truth. At this stage of life, living under the same roof isn't always the best idea. In fact, for many older adults, it's the exact reason things fall apart. Think about how much of your life has been spent building your own rhythm, your routines, your space, your way of waking up and winding down. You've earned that. Why throw it all away just to squeeze two different lives into the same four walls? Let me tell you about Margaret and James. She's 70, he's 68. Both widowed, both kind-hearted, both ready to love again. They were so excited to be together that they moved in after just a few months. But the little things started adding up fast. Margaret loved quiet mornings with coffee and a crossword puzzle. James? He blasted music the second his feet hit the floor. Margaret was in bed by 9. 0. James stayed up until 2. Warras, watching old westerns. Within weeks, they were snapping at each other over toothpaste caps and television volume. Eventually, they made a bold decision: to live apart. Not because they stopped loving each other, but because they wanted the love to last. Now they see each other a few times a week. They go on walks, eat dinner together, spend weekends side by side. And when they say goodbye at night, it's not cold, it's respectful. They each get to return to their own sanctuary, their own peace. The idea that living separately means you're not serious is nonsense. If anything, it can be a sign of maturity, of knowing yourself well enough to say, I love you, but I also love my space. Sometimes love grows best when you give it breathing room. And while we're on the subject of space, let's talk about something else people don't always address early on. Boundaries. When we're young, we think love is about giving everything. Giving time, giving energy, giving ourselves completely. But by the time you've reached your 60s or 70s, you know better. You know that some things, your mornings, your health, your time with your grandchildren, your peace and quiet, aren't up for negotiation. That's not selfishness. That's wisdom. I remember Carol and Thomas, two folks who met during a book club in Mexico City. Carol was soft-spoken, loved mornings in silence with her Bible and a cup of tea. Thomas, on the other hand, woke up full of energy and wanted to talk. At first, they danced around it. But after a few weeks of tension, Carol finally said, I need this time for myself. After that, I'd love to chat. And guess what? That one small sentence saved their relationship. Boundaries don't have to be harsh. They can be clear and kind at the same time. Try this. Next time you feel frustrated with someone you care about, pause and ask yourself, did I ever actually tell them what I need? Or did I just assume they'd figure it out? Most conflicts in relationships, especially at this age, aren't about major betrayals. They're about the little things that were never spoken out loud. A helpful way to think about it is like a traffic light. Some things are green. You're flexible about them. You're happy to adjust, to compromise. Some things are yellow. They're negotiable, but they need discussion. And then there are red lights. These are non-negotiables. Your rest, your privacy, your routine, your values. When someone runs through your red lights again and again, they're not respecting you. They're rewriting the rules of your life without your permission. Boundaries are not walls that push people out. They're doors that help the right people come in and stay in safely. But let's be honest. Setting boundaries only works when you're not dragging the past around with you. That's why it's so important to look at the things you've been carrying, especially the hurts that never fully healed. I've met so many people who enter new relationships still grieving the loss of an old one. Sometimes it's from a divorce that ended badly. Other times it's the quiet ache of widowhood, or even regret over chances never taken. And they say things like, "That's all behind me." But you can hear it in their voice. It's not. Unspoken grief doesn't go away. It just hides, waiting for a new relationship to bring it back up. Maria, a woman I once spoke with from Peru, was a perfect example. After years of emotional manipulation in her previous marriage, she found herself in a new relationship with a kind man who genuinely cared for her. But every time he made a mistake, even something small, she flinched. She was still reacting to wounds he never caused. Because deep down, she hadn't truly let go of the past. The way forward is gentle, but necessary. Sometimes it's writing a letter to someone who hurt you, not to send, just to release. Other times it's allowing yourself to grieve what could have been. Grief doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And healing doesn't always look like closure. It looks like peace. Before you open your heart to someone new, ask yourself, is there a part of my past that still hurts when I touch it? Is there a name I still can't say without feeling a little sting? That's where you begin. That's the place that needs light. No one else can carry your pain for you. And no new love can fix an old wound. But when you choose to heal on your own terms, you step into the next chapter, lighter, clearer, and more whole. Because love should never be something you use to run away from yourself. It should be a place you arrive at, with both feet grounded, both eyes open, and both hands free. By now, you've probably noticed a common thread running through everything we've talked about: the importance of protecting your well-being. And that brings us to something that, frankly, can make or break a relationship at this stage of life: your health. It's easy to think that love will carry us through anything. That if someone really cares about us, they'll help us through our aches, our pills, our appointments. And yes, a loving partner can walk beside you, but they can't carry you. And they certainly can't manage your health for you. David, a retired teacher I knew, learned this the hard way. He was meticulous about his diet, went for walks every morning, kept up with doctor visits. Then he met someone who was his complete opposite. She meant well, but she didn't like doctors, hated talking about health, and pushed junk food like it was a love language. At first, he went along to keep the peace. But over time, he stopped walking. He gained weight. He missed checkups. He didn't feel like himself anymore. He told me, "I thought I was choosing love, but I was slowly giving up the one thing that kept me feeling alive: my health." No matter how charming someone is, no matter how sweet their words may sound, if they drag you away from your own well-being, that's not love. That's erosion. Before you bring someone new into your life, take inventory. Are you honoring your body the way it needs to be honored? Are you still prioritizing your routines, your movement, your rest, your checkups, your medicine? A relationship should support those things, not replace them. Because nothing burns out a bond faster than unmanaged health issues that could have been prevented. And if you've never tried this before, here's a quick practice that can settle your mind and body. Inhale deeply for 4 seconds, hold for 2, then exhale slowly for 6. Do it a few times. It calms the nervous system and clears the noise. Sometimes even the biggest decisions feel easier when you're breathing like you love yourself. Now, while you're tending to your health, there's another delicate area we need to talk about. Your adult children. It might be your son who still checks in weekly, or your daughter who's fiercely protective. Maybe they've seen you get hurt in the past and they're scared it'll happen again. Maybe they worry about inheritance, about someone else getting too close too quickly. Or maybe, though they won't admit it, they don't like the idea of you giving your attention to someone other than them. Whatever the case, one thing is certain. If you start a relationship later in life, your kids will have opinions. And sometimes, they'll make those opinions loud and clear. Susan, a warm-hearted widow in her late 60s, once told me she felt like she was on trial after introducing her new partner to her children. "What's going to happen to the house?" they asked. "What if he just wants your pension?" Instead of feeling happy about her new chapter, she felt like she had to defend it. This is where calm communication matters. Not apology. Not guilt. Just clarity. You don't owe your children control over your choices, but you do owe them honesty. Let them meet the person if the relationship is serious. Reassure them that your finances are protected and that you've thought things through. But make it clear, you are still living your life. You raised them. You love them. And now it's your turn to honor yourself. There's a line in Scripture that says, "A man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife." That same idea applies in reverse, too. At a certain point, every adult, no matter their age, deserves space to make decisions without permission slips from their kids. And if they push too hard, set boundaries. Don't allow disrespect. Let your love for your children include loving yourself enough not to let them run your life. Relationships in later life don't just involve logistics and emotions. They also involve something most people avoid until it's too late: legal and financial protection. Helen, a bright 74-year-old woman married again after years of being widowed. She and her husband never talked about wills, accounts, or assets. When he passed away unexpectedly, the legal chaos that followed nearly destroyed her emotionally. His children and hers went to war over everything. She told me, it wasn't the money that hurt. It was knowing we could have avoided all of it with one honest conversation. It doesn't have to be complicated. A clear will. A written agreement about your home or your accounts. Power of attorney documents. A trusted person to manage your care if you become unable. These aren't signs of distrust. They're signs of wisdom. You wouldn't build a house without a foundation. Don't build a relationship without one either. You may feel awkward bringing up these topics, but I promise, talking about them now saves heartbreak later. If someone resists the conversation, ask yourself why. The people who love you should also want to protect you and your family. And while all of this can feel heavy, let's not forget something often overlooked in these conversations: intimacy. Too often people assume that just because you're older, romance fades. But that's simply not true. In fact, for many people, this stage of life brings a deeper kind of connection. One that's slower, more tender, more about presence than performance. Frank, a retired carpenter, once told me, "At this age, I don't need fireworks. I just want honesty, a gentle touch, and someone who really sees me." That's the heart of mature intimacy. Not pretending to be who you were at 30, but being proud of who you are now and letting someone meet you there. Without shame, without pressure. It's okay to talk about your needs. It's okay to say what makes you feel close, what makes you feel distant. Because connection isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, even quiet. But here's the key. Don't fake it. Don't perform. Don't chase some ideal that belongs in a magazine ad. Just show up as you are and let that be enough. And maybe the most important reminder of all? Don't become emotionally dependent. It's one thing to share your life with someone. It's another to hand them the keys to your joy. The moment you feel like you can't function without their call, their text, their attention, that's when you lose yourself. And losing yourself at this age can feel more devastating than ever before. You are still the main character in your story. If someone adds color to your days, wonderful. But they should never become the entire picture. Spend time with friends. Volunteer. Take that art class. Go to church. Start the garden. Do the thing that fills you up when no one else is around. That's your foundation. And no relationship should ever take it from you. Because love is not about losing yourself in someone else's life. It's about living yours fully and sharing the overflow. There's something deeply powerful about getting older with your eyes wide open. You stop trying to impress. You stop chasing things that don't matter. And if you're lucky, you start living for peace, genuine, hard-earned peace. But even with all that wisdom, it's easy to forget one essential truth. You don't need to do this life alone. But that also doesn't mean you need to share every part of it with a partner. Let's take a moment to talk about your support system. Not just romantic connections, but the people who truly help you stay grounded. Friends, neighbors, fellow churchgoers. The lady you see on your morning walk who always waves. These connections are not small. They're the net that catches you when life gets wobbly. The mistake so many people make in later life is putting all their emotional eggs in one basket. One person becomes their partner, their therapist, their nurse, their entertainment, their entire world. And when that one relationship cracks, even a little, it feels like everything falls apart. But what if your world could be bigger than one person? Think about your connection map. Who do you call just to chat? Who makes you laugh? Who would you trust to run to the pharmacy if you got sick? That map matters. And if you realize your map feels a little too empty, that's okay. You can start rebuilding it, one small moment at a time. A phone call, an invite to lunch, a class, a prayer group. You are never too old to reconnect with community. Because while romantic love may be sweet, community is what carries you. Now let's return to something you might have let go of somewhere along the way: your purpose. In your 20s and 30s, your purpose might have been raising kids, working hard, saving for retirement. But what about now? What lights you up these days? What gives your day shape? For some, it's gardening. For others, it's writing, volunteering, painting, learning to play piano, taking care of a pet, helping raise a grandchild, or traveling to the places you always said you'd go. The danger comes when you let someone else's life become your purpose. You slip into their routine. You shape your days around their preferences. And little by little, your own sense of self begins to fade. Frank, remember him, the retired carpenter, once said something simple that stuck with me. If you don't know what your purpose is, you'll always end up in someone else's story. At this stage of life, that can feel like a slow kind of disappearing. But your story still matters. Even now. Especially now. One way to protect your purpose is by carving out sacred time for it. Just like you'd make time for a doctor's appointment or a birthday dinner, you block off time for what makes your spirit come alive. And you don't compromise that time, not even for someone you love. Because the people who truly love you won't want you to shrink to fit their life. They'll cheer for the parts of you that feel fully alive. So if you've been waiting for permission to reclaim a passion, this is it. It's not selfish. It's necessary. Because the more rooted you are in who you are, the less likely you'll fall for a relationship that makes you forget it. Now, I wish we could stop here, with purpose, community, and health intact. But we need to talk about something uncomfortable. Something no one really wants to admit. Manipulation. At 60 or 70, you might think you've seen it all, that you're too experienced to be fooled. But emotional manipulation is sneaky. It doesn't show up waving red flags. It shows up as compliments that turn into guilt, as flattery that turns into control, as care that starts to suffocate. John, a friend of mine, once shared this warning. She started with, "I love that you're independent." A few months later, it turned into, "Why do you always need time for yourself? Don't you love me?" That shift happened slowly. And by the time he noticed, he was no longer making decisions based on what was best for him. He was making them out of fear. Fear of upsetting her. Fear of being called selfish. Fear of being left. If someone in your life makes you feel small for protecting your peace, or tries to twist your words until you doubt your own memory or motives, take a step back. That is not love. That is control in disguise. You don't need to accuse. You don't need to argue. But you do need to pay attention to how you feel around them. Are you calm? Or anxious? Do you feel seen? Or judged? Do you feel respected? Or managed? Healthy relationships don't need blind loyalty. They welcome truth. And if the truth is that someone is not good for your well-being, it's not too late to walk away. Not at 65. Not at 75. Not ever. Because no matter your age, your dignity is worth defending. That brings us to one final reminder. Love, when it's real, doesn't take away your clarity, it sharpens it. It doesn't crowd out your peace, it deepens it. It doesn't ask you to give up your purpose, it supports it. And if a relationship can't do those things, it's okay to say no. Not because you're cold, not because you're scared, but because you've learned what it costs to betray yourself. So if you find yourself being pulled into something that feels too fast, too loud, too consuming, pause. Breathe. Come back to yourself. Ask, am I more at peace with this person or without them? Ask, does this relationship help me grow or does it make me shrink? Ask, would I choose this love if I didn't feel afraid of being alone? Because if the only reason you're staying is fear, then you already have your answer. You deserve a life that is not constantly being negotiated. You deserve mornings that feel restful, days that feel purposeful, evenings that feel calm. You deserve people in your life who respect your no as much as your yes, who honor your time, your truth, and your right to change your mind. You deserve a kind of love that feels like coming home to yourself. And if that love comes from friends, from nature, from your faith, from your purpose, then that's more than enough. You are already whole. So take care of yourself. Tend to your peace. Guard your clarity like a treasure. And remember, being alone is not a problem to fix. It can be one of the greatest freedoms of your life. If this video spoke to you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. We'd love to hear your story. And if you found this helpful, give it a like and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more honest, empowering content. Here's to living your later years with courage, clarity, and peace. You've earned it. You really have.